So my name is Philip Green. I was born in South Africa, but I grew up on a farm in Zambia where my family still farm today and where I live today. I have British and South African citizenship, but I identify as Zambian. I attended school here in Cape Town, boarding school. It may tell a little bit about my age, but we used to get USD traveler's checks in Zambia that I would then cash in here to use for spending money when I was at school and even into university. I was lucky enough to study computer science at the University of Cape Town. Most students who graduated left for Microsoft or Mosaic. Mosaic was the builder of Postillion Systems, which is a switch. It was called Postillion at that stage. I think it then went to S1 and ACI. That still looks after many transactions in Africa today. I played a little bit too much rugby, so I did not manage to get into Mosaic, even though I wanted to. I still went into payments, though, instead building a payment gateway that I thought was for online shopping, but retrospectively I learned was used for the adult entertainment industry. Since then, I've worked in supporting switch operations in South Africa, trading technology in the UK, fish farming in Ghana, medical health and environmental consulting in Zambia. I tried to evangelize mobile money APIs at the GSMA, and then ran mobile money technology operations across Gambia, Sierra Leone, DRC, and Angola for AfriMoney, before finally joining the Mojaloop Foundation in Zambia. So, in summary, I understand some of the history of payments, the pain of liquidity, the reality on the ground in Africa, and to some degree, the gray areas of what payments can be used for better or for worse. I'd not intended, I guess, to have such a long introduction about myself, but I thought it important to share some of my background, I guess, following the ivory tower question put to Costa. I thought it a tough but good question, and because I think there's a risk for most of us here today that we may end up being in an ivory tower at some stage. And I think it's important to be humble, and it's important that we spend effort being as grounded as possible. I think the very authentic session on village banking and financial inclusion sort of highlighted this very well. For these sessions, we're quite focused on ILP and ILF's mission, ILP, and our projects around them. But a massive amount of work has been done before us and is being done alongside us around financial inclusion, which I believe is it's important to acknowledge and for us to give credit to. There's a saying in Zambia popularized by our late President Kenneth Kaunda, Tiende Pamozi, which is let us go together. We've seen many presentations yesterday and today discussing the need for financial inclusion, so I'm not going to cover that here. Today I'll try and show from a high level what Mojaloop is doing for payments and financial inclusion in Africa and how. I'll give a brief introduction to Mojaloop before discussing what we understand instant payments to be and how they differ from inclusive instant payments. I'll then go into what Mojaloop is doing to drive implementation of instant payments with some real life examples. But unfortunately, in the words of Pedro, no Mexican style demos, which were very good. Yeah. So Mojaloop is a name that sort of means a few different things. What is Mojaloop? Going clockwise, we have the Mojaloop Foundation. The Mojaloop Foundation was formed to develop and promote open source software solutions that make digital financial services more accessible. The foundation's mission is to enable interoperable payments that connect people with formal financial systems, especially in emerging economies. By offering a platform that financial institutions of all sizes can use, from rural banks to major fintech companies, the foundation hopes to reduce and increase the ease of reaching unbanked populations. To this end, it promotes the Mojaloop platform, which is a reference implementation for an open source inclusive instant payments platform. The platform's key users would be central banks and national switch operators looking to increase financial inclusion in their respective countries with a low-cost platform that gives them sovereignty. Lastly, we have the Mojaloop community, which is made up of developers and organizations that contribute to the Mojaloop platform and cause. I've said very little about them, but the community is actually the single most important part of the system. So, today I guess, depending on who you've listened to, if you listen to Costa, like Costa showed, I guess a graph of instant payments. And so there are many instant payment systems in the world today. So I've shown a handful on this map, but there are over 60 worldwide, and there'll be more coming. So given there are so many, one might ask, did we need to build Mojaloop or drive for something like Mojaloop to be implemented? For me, the key answer to this question is differentiating between instant payments and inclusive instant payments. So when we look at instant payments, and some of these might be debated, but in level 1 principles from the Gates Foundation, or in sort of the way we see things at Mojaloop, for instant payments systems, we would like to see push-only payments. So whenever a payment goes out, the person who's in charge of the wallet needs to be the one sending it to somebody else. This reduces fraud. It needs to be irrevocable. So once I've sent that payment, I can't just quickly and sneakily pull it back. This again helps with fraud. We want payments to be interoperable. So obviously it needs to go from, maybe not obviously, but from one bank to another bank, from one bank to a wallet. We want the payments to be mobile focused. So many payment systems are bank first or card first, and this doesn't help in, I guess, emerging markets where we are more wallet focused, and that wallet tends to be accessed from the mobile phone, whether it's through a smartphone or whether it's through a feature phone. So I think feature phone is something that some people, I think I heard the reference dumb phone, but like we use feature phone as a non-smartphone. So that's a little bit about, I guess, instant payments. How do we make instant payments inclusive? So if we want them to be inclusive, we want the clearing to happen in less than a second. It's so important in terms of liquidity, I guess, for things to happen quickly. We want all financial service providers to be handled. So we don't just want banks. We want mobile money operators, we want microfinance institutions, we want community banks, all to be connected to the system. We want this to be done at very low cost. We want to have tiered KYC. It's really, really important in many countries. People may not have a national identity card. They might have to travel a really long way to get one. So you want to be able to allow people onto the system to transact in very low values before they are required to actually hand in some sort of ID. This for me is like a pain point when working. I guess at a mobile money company, not having any KYC or identifying customers is a real nightmare when it comes to fraud. But you really do need people to access the service with a low level of KYC in the beginning. We want to be able to, I guess, send low value. We want to settle the same day. We want to have multiple channels, so it can be online, it can be mobile. Within mobile, we want it to be either be an app or USSD. We want alias routing, so we can use phone number, email address, national ID card to identify somebody. And we also want to have a lot of use cases. The more use cases we have, the more scale we have, the more we can reduce the cost of the centralized infrastructure. So if we add those two together, what we get is inclusive instant payments. So inclusive instant payments give us, they give us security, they give us lower cost, and they give us a really good user experience. So, I wanted now to take us to just a real life sort of walkthrough of what instant payments looks like in Zambia and what, I guess, where we've got to today and where we still need to go. And I just want to sort of précis this with, and this talks to like acknowledging what's been done already. Financial inclusion in Zambia is something that's improving day by day. We see what we call e-money transactions, but wallet transactions going through the roof. So much so that the national switch is having a problem maintaining infrastructure to support the volume of transactions. So there's a great deal of work that's been done. There's a great deal of work that's been done already. And our national switch, a lot of people, when they come, are quite surprised at what's happening. So if we look at the left here, I don't know where to look to tell people, whoops. But yeah, if you look at the left of the screen, can you see this? No. Can you see this? I can't. Okay. In some ways this is good because there's a little piece that's missing, but this is a screenshot of my phone, which clearly wasn't high enough definition. But in it, at the top, you've got a phone number. Below that, you've got a recipient name. We really like this. So Costa was talking about the name lookup. We have the name lookup there. We know where it's going. The next line is the operator, which shows MTN. Red is for Airtel. So you can see I'm sending from Airtel to MTN. So really great that we've got cross network. You can send from one provider to another provider. This is key. The next line is amount. On my screen, I've got 100, but if you can just imagine that it's 5. And then again, what's missing here, but like below, what would be shown is the charges. The charges are 2 kwacha, 58 ngwe. Now, 2 kwacha, 58 ngwe to send 5 kwacha is quite a lot of money. That's over 50% of your transaction. The amount you're sending is on transaction cost. So, what else have we got there? So those are the key components. So on the face of it, apart from the fees, like everything looks good. We've got like a name lookup. We know how much we're going to be charged, and we can send to somebody on another platform. This is super positive. And so, like looking at looking what's been implemented in Zambia, 5 kwachas, it's equivalent to about, I guess, what is it like? I don't know, 40 cents. May have done the maths wrong there, but it's below $1. It's going to settle the same day. We have multiple channels. We also have tiered KYC. So if I actually bother to go and take my rental contract to Airtel, I'll be able to put quite a lot of cash in my account. Right now, I think you can put in around about $200. So in terms of where we sort of part of the way there, so in terms of clearing, depending on who you send money to, generally it'll clear in under a second. But when you send to MTN, because MTN has some network difficulties, that can take longer than a second. It can fail. All FSPs enabled, so financial service providers. Most financial service providers are actually onboarded in Zambia, but there are some smaller ones that aren't actually able to get on. So that's something that still needs to be worked out. Is it participant governed? Almost. All of the banks are represented, but mobile money operators and microfinance institutes are not. Is it very low cost? As we saw, 2 kwacha 58, well, actually, no, as I told you, 2 kwacha 58 is what the transaction charge was to send 5 kwacha. So when we look at that, if you break down that 2 kwacha 58, very simply, and I caveat this with very simply, 80 ingwe, so 0.8 kwacha, of that is the switching fee. So roughly a third of the transaction cost is going to the switch. That's pretty high. So that's something definitely that can come down. I have some questions about why that's so high. When I worked on a switch in Zambia 10 years ago, I sort of had pricing for a transaction at around about one US cents, whereas the current cost is about 3. So definitely it should be able to come down. I think Mojaloop can help with that. What hasn't yet been implemented, we don't have many use cases. And so we only have P2P, and so there's definitely a demand for merchant, the merchant use case. And I think interestingly, compared to Kenya, Kenya, you mentioned that there's a dominance of Safaricom, and banks are worried about how much market share Safaricom has taken. Zambia, there's an interesting perspective. You will hear people saying that, well, you will hear banks saying that they're worried about competition. But I've sat with banks where they've specifically asked me to make available interoperable merchant payments so that they can actually get market share and they can get money into their accounts from mobile money operators. So it's a really interesting space. In Zambia, banks really fought not to be interoperable with mobile money, but now that they are interoperable, they're asking for more interoperability. Right. So now I kind of wanted to just chat a little bit about how Mojaloop can, I guess, help us realize these inclusive instant payment goals and answer to some of the things that are missing in the Zambian example. But of course, there's many other examples across emerging markets where there are these gaps. So Mojaloop is entirely open source platform. This eliminates licensing fees and reduces overall software costs, and it enhances budget efficiency. I guess there are some big backers behind open source, behind Mojaloop. So we have like Interledger, we have Gates Foundation, and others. And so the interesting thing about this open sourceness is that we can practice a level of sharing, togetherness, Ubuntu, in terms of if Zambia adopted Mojaloop and work was done in Rwanda that was sponsored by Gates Foundation, then that work can be used in Zambia and vice versa. There's also some interesting, I guess, some interesting ways that switches can be developed that is kind of unique from what we have now. So currently, if you want to add a new use case, you need to go to your provider, basically tell them exactly what they want. They'll come back with a quote. 6 months later, you may have what you want. With Mojaloop being entirely open source, you might have a situation where like an MFI, a bank, and a mobile money operator might actually collaborate within Rwanda or Zambia and say, you know what, like there's a use case here that we want to implement. They might actually decide to implement that use case with their own resources. And then basically this would, I guess, be done in consultation with the central switch, but then they can take it to the central switch and say, please can you now take this into the switch. So we have a robust transaction protocol. I'll speak a little bit about this later, but not in depth. But essentially, Mojaloop uses ILP and an account lookup, which we've seen with the name, which really reduces the failure rates. And so reducing failure rates reduces operational costs. And when I was talking about that 2 kwacha, 2 kwacha 58 charge, like 33% of that was the switching cost. There's another piece of that cost, which is just the cost that it basically costs a mobile money operator to actually turn cash into digital. And then there's the last piece, which is just like managing that transaction and managing any fallout from that transaction. And that can be really huge. So one of the operators that I've been talking to has like a fundamental and unscalable issue with the amount of transactions that are currently failing with the switch that they're connecting to. So this robust transaction protocol really helps to lower cost across the banks and the switch itself. There's affordable hardware utilization. So Mojaloop runs effectively. I think Roberto's team, or at least I think the Interledger team mentioned running Mojaloop on Raspberry Pi, which of course we don't recommend, but you can do it. But yeah, it runs on low-cost hardware, and it also doesn't need expensive software. So you don't need IBM AIX or anything like that. So it's a scalable cost model. Because of the way it's built, it's something that the ILF team mentioned also is that you can, as and when you need more hardware, you can buy more hardware. So just talking a little bit, I'm just going to gloss over this. I've got 6 minutes left. I got to rush. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna gloss over this, but like we have a discovery phase. This is the account lookup where you try and find the name in the account and make sure that there's actually an account on the other side. Then we have the agreement phase where we're using ILP to get both parties to agree what the fees are going to be, how much money is going to move. And then that's basically, I guess, just signing in blood that you definitely committed to the transaction. And then you have the transfer phase where you actually move the money. And again, ILP is critical here in the transfer phase, is that if both people don't actually confirm that everything's happened, then we just undo the transaction. Right. I glossed over that, but given that we're here at the Interledger Summit, it's a critical piece to Mojaloop and how we do things and how we make things stable. So here I just wanted to quickly show you some accelerators. If you're in Nairobi, you might have seen these use cases being presented, but this is just an example of how Mojaloop is sort of promotes innovation in a very practical way, and also talks about low cost. So we had 5 use cases that were implemented by accelerators. We have an accelerator program where we teach people about Mojaloop, and then they sort of do like a keystone project where they implement something Mojaloop related. So Probase just did standard person-to-person transactions from their banking portal using Mojaloop. Igenet Solutions did request to pay merchant transactions using a point-of-sale machine. IMASYS from Malawi, they did merchant payments using a QR code. And then Net1 did business-to-person disbursements. Spark Systems did government-to-person disbursements integrating with Mojaloop. So these were all done in probably elapsed time, maybe 3 months, but actual working time about a month. So it just shows you how quickly you can develop things with Mojaloop. The other thing that I wanted to highlight here is that across Zambia and Malawi, you now have 5 companies that know how to work with Mojaloop. So you don't have to go outside. You don't have to go to India, Russia, Estonia, wherever, to go and get developers to do the work. You can do it locally. I personally get excited about that because it means we can develop a tech community within Zambia and promote our own sovereignty. So in terms of innovation, this is a little bit of a repeat, but we have an open source platform. I went into this a little bit. It allows you to, I guess, innovate quite a bit. You've got third-party integrations. So again, the Roberto's discussion sort of highlighted the third-party payment integrators, which allows you to not only have banks and financial institutions touching the switch, but fintechs as well. Yes, and then I'm going to skip the third point. So just looking at the Mojaloop footprint, I should have updated this a little bit just to cover where we are. Of course, from Roberto's presentation, we saw I couldn't find the English logo online, but we've got the People's Clearinghouse, which is going to come online soon. In Rwanda, we're going to have eCash, hopefully coming online in November. Missing from here is Togo, which is also implementing Mojaloop. We've got CBC, the Comesa Business Council, doing an interregional Mojaloop installation. We also have TIPS from Tanzania, which is implemented already. We have WinePay in Myanmar, implemented already, and we have Higala in the Philippines on the way. We also have a proof of concept, hopefully running soon in Zambia, and a few other countries which I'd love to mention, but I'm not allowed to. Yeah, so yeah, that's me. So, sorry, I had before I finish. Sorry, quickly got one. Just before I finish, I think three key takeaways. Number one, instant payments and inclusive instant payments are not the same thing, and it may be a little bit subtle, but it is important. Number two, Mojaloop is a vehicle that can get you to inclusive instant payments. At the same time, just using Mojaloop's principles or principles similar can also get you to the same place. And then lastly, I would say let's tiende pamoja. Let's walk together. Thank you.